My girlfriend posted if he wanted to. He would while I was working 2 jobs for us. I met her during one of the hardest chapters of my life. I was juggling 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and driving a beat-up car that rattled every time I turned the key. My days started before sunrise and ended long after midnight. I worked mornings at a gas station and nights loading trucks in a warehouse. My dream was simple: save enough to open a small repair shop and build a stable future. When she came into my life, I thought she was the missing piece that made the grind worth it. She seemed kind, patient, and fascinated by my determination. She would hold my hand and tell me that she believed in my vision, that one day we would laugh about these struggles from a better place. I trusted her words more than anything. Every morning, after finishing my night shift, I would swing by her campus with her favorite coffee. I wanted her to see that even though I was exhausted, I was still showing up for her. She loved to post online about relationships, sharing quotes about loyalty and building together. I used to feel proud when I saw them, thinking she was talking about us. I told myself that the long hours and sacrifices were temporary, that she understood what I was doing and who I was doing it for. But slowly, her tone began to change. She stopped smiling when I arrived with coffee. She started making small comments that cut deep, like how her friends' boyfriends had more time for them, or how they went on trips while we barely had movie nights. I brushed it off as normal frustration. I thought she was tired of waiting for better days. I kept pushing myself, believing that if I worked harder, things would get easier for both of us. The problem was that every time I gave more, she seemed to care less. I noticed she spent more time on her phone when we were together, scrolling endlessly through social media. She began following lifestyle influencers who talked about what a man should do if he really cared. It was like she was comparing me to people living entirely different lives. I tried to talk to her about it, but she would just say she wanted to feel appreciated. She had no idea that every shift I took was for us, not for me. One evening, after finishing a 14-hour day, I stopped at a cafe near her apartment. I wanted to surprise her with pastries from her favorite bakery. I was tired, my hands still stained from grease, but my heart was light because I thought she would smile when she saw me. While waiting for her to arrive, I opened my phone and scrolled through social media to pass time. That was when I saw it. Her post. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. If he wanted to, he would. And below it, she had written, "When effort becomes optional, love becomes wasted." At first, I thought I was reading it wrong. I looked at the timestamp. It was posted 20 minutes earlier. 20 minutes ago, while I was standing in line for her pastries, she had been writing that. I felt the air leave my lungs. My entire body went cold. I imagined her sitting somewhere with her friends, rolling her eyes at me, calling me lazy or unromantic, while I was out there trying to build a life for both of us. When she finally showed up, I couldn't even look at her the same way. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said she had a long day. I asked her about the post. She laughed and said it was just something she saw online, that I was overthinking. But her eyes avoided mine. That was the first time I noticed the distance between us, a quiet wall that had been building without me realizing it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, too exhausted to cry, too numb to sleep. The words echoed in my head over and over like a broken record. If he wanted to, he would. I replayed every sacrifice I had made, every time I had chosen work over rest, every moment I had skipped meals to make sure we had enough. It all felt invisible. For the first time, I began to question whether love was supposed to hurt like this. Whether being a provider meant being unappreciated. I looked at my reflection in the mirror the next morning and barely recognized the man staring back. His eyes were tired, but somewhere deep inside, a small spark was starting to burn, a quiet realization that maybe she didn't see my effort because she never wanted to. And that thought, as painful as it was, changed everything. The night I asked her about the post, I already knew the answer would not heal me. She smiled like it was nothing, said it was just a quote she saw online, and told me not to take it personally. But her voice had changed. It carried something sharp beneath the softness, a tone that made me feel smaller. From that moment, everything I did seemed to lose meaning. My effort, once admired, became invisible. When I came home late from the warehouse, she no longer asked how my shift went. She rolled her eyes and said I was always tired. The same hard work she used to brag about now sounded like an excuse in her mind. I started noticing the comparisons. Her friends' boyfriends took them on weekend trips. They posted photos at restaurants, beaches, and concerts. She began mentioning them more often, casually at first, then deliberately. She said things like, "It must be nice to have a man who knows how to balance work and love." I wanted to tell her that I was working so we could have that life one day, but the words stuck in my throat. It felt like no matter how much I explained, she had already decided that I wasn't enough. Instead of confronting her, I did what I always did. I worked harder. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse, thinking that maybe if she saw the results of my grind, she would understand. I dreamed about surprising her with a small vacation, just the two of us. I kept telling myself she was just stressed, that her frustration would fade once things improved. But the more I gave, the more distant she became. Her messages got shorter, her tone colder. Sometimes she wouldn't reply for hours, then claim she fell asleep or got busy. I tried to believe her. I wanted to believe her. Until the nights, she stopped coming home on time. She said she had to study late with classmates, but when she returned, her perfume had changed. The scent was stronger, more expensive than anything she owned. I knew because I was the one who bought her the last bottle. She looked different too, her hair messy, her smile forced. When I asked about it, she laughed and told me not to be insecure. She said that jealousy was a weak man's disease. Then she kissed me on the cheek and went to bed as if nothing had happened. But something inside me shifted that night. The quote she posted stayed pinned at the top of her page, like a quiet accusation. Every time I saw it, it felt like a reminder of how she saw me now. Someone who wasn't doing enough, even when I was doing everything. I started noticing the small lies, the gaps in her stories. She said she was with her study group, but her phone showed missed calls during those hours. She said she left her charger at work, but her battery was always full when she came home late. One Friday, my shift ended early. I decided not to tell her. I drove home, heart pounding, half hoping I was wrong. Her car was gone. The house was silent. I waited. Minutes turned into hours. My phone stayed empty, no texts, no calls. Around midnight, headlights flashed across the window. I heard the car door slam and the sound of her heels against the pavement. She walked in, startled to see me still awake. Her hair was tangled, her lipstick smudged. The smell of someone else's cologne followed her into the room like a ghost that didn't belong there. I asked if she had fun studying. She froze for a second, then smiled nervously and said they lost track of time. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. She had become a stranger wearing the face of someone I used to love. She kept talking, making excuses, but I couldn't hear her anymore. My mind was quiet, detached, almost peaceful. That was the moment something in me broke, but not in the way she expected. I stopped begging for her attention. I stopped trying to prove my worth. I understood that no amount of effort could fill a heart already searching elsewhere. So I smiled at her, nodded like everything was fine, and went to bed without another word. Lying there in the dark, I made a silent promise to myself. I would stop fighting for someone who had already left me in spirit. I would stop building a future with someone who couldn't see the value of my present. I closed my eyes, not out of exhaustion but clarity. The love I had for her wasn't gone yet, but the illusion was. That night, without tears or anger, I began preparing my exit. It was quiet, deliberate, and final in ways she wouldn't understand until it was too late. 2 weeks passed after that quiet night, and the silence between us grew into something I could no longer ignore. She moved through the house like a guest, polite but distant, always busy, always tired, always somewhere else in her mind. I had already made my decision. It was time to test what our love was built on. I told her I had lost one of my jobs. In truth, I had been offered a much better position across the city with double the pay and real benefits. But she didn't need to know that yet. I wanted to see if she loved the man or the comfort he provided. When I told her the news, she didn't even pretend to be worried. She frowned for a second, then looked at her phone. I explained that things might get tight for a few months, that we might have to downsize or skip a few luxuries. She barely looked up. She just said, "Maybe we should take a break," as if the words meant nothing. I nodded slowly, pretending to think about it, though inside, the confirmation hit like a cold wave. She wasn't there for me. She was there for the version of me she could show off. She packed a small bag that same evening. No tears, no argument, no questions about how I would manage. She just left, claiming she needed space to think. I watched her drive away without saying goodbye. The moment the sound of her car faded, the quiet felt peaceful. I sat in that empty apartment surrounded by everything I had built for us and realized how much I had lost trying to prove my worth to someone who never planned to stay. A few days later, the truth arrived in the form of a notification. My friend sent me a message with a screenshot. It was her, smiling on social media beside a man I had never seen before. He wore designer clothes, a shiny watch, and that empty grin of someone who measures love in gifts and attention. Her caption was familiar. It read, "When a man truly wants you, he makes time." I stared at it for a long time, not with anger, but with something deeper, a quiet sense of finality. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't block her. I just let it sit there. Every new post became a confirmation of what I already knew. She went from posting motivational quotes about loyalty to showing off dinners, weekend trips, and luxury gifts. Each picture looked identical to the life she once claimed she wanted with me. I realized she wasn't chasing love, she was chasing validation. The man beside her wasn't new. He was just the next version of the same dream she kept repainting. Meanwhile, I stayed silent and focused. I started my new job that Monday. The difference was night and day. Better pay, fewer hours, and a boss who respected hard work. I used my free time to build what I had always wanted, a small business plan that I could finally afford to bring to life. I poured every ounce of disappointment into progress. It became fuel. I no longer checked her social media. I no longer cared who she was with or what she thought of me. The pain had turned into purpose. 3 months later, I signed the lease for my first auto repair shop. The sign above the door had my name on it, something I had dreamed of since my first job at that gas station years ago. I didn't tell anyone except my closest friends. I didn't post a single thing online. I wanted the peace of quiet success, the kind that doesn't need an audience. But fate has a strange sense of timing. One evening, while I was cleaning the front window of the shop, I saw her reflection behind me through the glass. She had parked across the street with her new boyfriend. He was showing her something on his phone, probably another photo opportunity. For a brief moment, her eyes met mine. I smiled faintly and went back to wiping the glass. She froze, pretending not to see me, then turned away quickly. That moment told me everything. She wasn't happy. She was performing happiness. Weeks later, I posted one photo. Just me standing in front of my new business, wearing a clean shirt, hands in my pockets, the afternoon sun glowing behind me. The caption was simple. If she believed in me, she'd still be here. It was not revenge. It was closure. I didn't check who liked it. I didn't scroll through her page. I just logged off, leaned back in my chair, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It was the first time I realized that sometimes losing someone is the only way to find yourself again. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the tools and grease and dreams I built alone, I finally understood that I had never really lost anything at all. Last month, she walked into my store like a ghost from another life. The bell above the door rang softly, and when I looked up, for a second I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Same girl, same perfume, same perfectly rehearsed smile, but there was something different in her eyes this time. They didn't carry pride anymore. They carried regret. She looked around the place slowly, pretending to admire the shelves and the polished floor, but I could see what she was really doing. She was looking for proof that I had moved on without her. She finally turned toward me and smiled as if no time had passed. She said she always knew I would make it, that she had believed in me from the beginning. Her voice was calm, practiced, almost nostalgic. I laughed quietly because I could still remember the night she walked away without hesitation. I didn't say anything at first. I just let her speak. She talked about how proud she was, how much she had missed my energy, how different things felt without me. Her words slid off me like rain on glass. Then her eyes fell on the bracelet around my wrist. It was the one she gave me before everything fell apart, a small black band with a silver clasp engraved with the words "Keep Going." She smiled softly and said she couldn't believe I still wore it. I looked at her and told her the truth. I kept it as a reminder of what I survived. Her smile froze halfway, her lips trembled just slightly, and she looked away. That was the first real reaction I had seen from her since she walked in. See? She changed the subject quickly, asking if we could catch up, maybe grab a coffee sometime. I told her I was busy and called my assistant over. When she turned, she froze again. Standing beside me was her former best friend, the same woman she had betrayed months before when she started seeing the man that friend had been dating. My assistant smiled politely and asked how she could help. The look on my ex's face was priceless. It wasn't anger, just quiet shock and humiliation that told me everything I needed to know. I asked my assistant to take over the counter while I stepped aside to check an order. My ex didn't move. She just stood there, hands shaking, eyes darting between me and the door. She mumbled something about being proud of me again, but her voice had lost all its confidence. I could tell she wanted to say more, to explain herself, to justify everything that had happened. But I had no interest in reopening old wounds. I had already healed in silence, and there was nothing left to prove. Before leaving, she walked closer and whispered that I had really changed. Her tone was half admiration, half disbelief. I nodded slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since that night she left. I told her calmly, if I wanted to, I did. She blinked, speechless, then turned and walked out. The same door she once slammed shut behind her now closed softly, almost respectfully. When the sound faded, my assistant looked at me and smiled knowingly. I smiled back and went back to work, hands steady, heart quiet. The shop smelled of oil and metal, and something else I couldn't quite name. Freedom, maybe. Outside, the sunlight hit the sign above my store, and for the first time, I realized how far I had come. I didn't need revenge through anger or words. My life had become the answer. That night, before closing, I removed the bracelet and placed it in a small drawer under the counter. I didn't need it anymore. The lesson had already done its job. Some reminders belong to the past, and some victories speak louder when you say nothing at all.